how to manage a startup with data. I mean, we had a very nice intervention from Asa. She showed us some data regarding buffer. Also interesting to discuss about what kind of metrics you fellow guys, entrepreneurs, and you in your successful journey through the company creation and the VC part, what kind of data you're looking at, what kind of data an entrepreneur should focus on early stage, then raising seed, Series A, etc. It's really cool to have all of you here today to discuss these topics. If you don't mind, I would like to start with Nick, because being CEO at Chartmogul, you are 100% committed to help people manage their company with data. Can you tell us a bit more about how you went to the idea of creating Chartmogul? And
the idea for Chartmogul. So yeah, I started this company around 2 years ago. Before then, I was working with Zendesk for 5 years, and Chartmogul analytics software for subscription businesses. It calculates things like monthly recurring revenue, retention rates, lifetime value, this kind of thing. And the idea came from basically just working at Zendesk. I was running the sales and support teams in Europe and then Asia. And yeah, we built out this dashboard internally using good data, actually. It was before Zendesk acquired Bime. And it was quite an addictive experience to be checking this dashboard. But the kind of user experience wasn't particularly great. Good data is okay, but it's a sort of general BI. It hasn't been designed specifically for subscription businesses. So the idea came as, I thought I can probably, we can probably build something better that is just specifically for SaaS and subscription businesses. So this is what we did, yeah.
Did you agree at that time on working on Chartmogul? What was your feeling, Christoph, that was really something relevant to work on at the time? Also at the time spent at Zendesk together, I mean.
Absolutely. I think the problem which Nick is solving at Chartmogul is one that we've seen countless times at pretty much all of the SaaS companies that we invested in, or that we are not investing in, but that we're talking to, at least until like 2 years ago or so. It was just really hard to get on top of all of the data. So it was one of the actually very few situations where I have experienced the problem firsthand, which a startup is trying to solve. That made it a very, very easy decision to invest in Chartmogul, alongside with the fact that Nick obviously has a ton of experience from Zendesk and got a fantastic reference from Mikkel, the CEO. So this was one of the easiest investment decisions ever made.
And Christoph, on your side, how much of a premium would you give to a startup or a company with a good follow-up, checking data, checking ARR, cash position, revenue, CAC, etc.?
I would say you can't calculate a premium as in like you get a 50% higher valuation if you understand your data. I think at somewhat later stages, it's a must-have anyway. So it's not a question about a premium or no premium, but are you going to get funded or not? I think if you're trying to raise a Series A or even further, and you don't have accurate data and a good understanding of your data, you'll just not be able to do it. At the somewhat earlier stages, I think seed investors like Point9 were, I think, a bit more flexible. We don't expect everything to be perfect, but it's definitely also a signal for us, like whether or not an entrepreneur understands what kind of data he wants to focus on, and if we get the feeling that somebody is driven by numbers and looking at the right metrics, that's definitely a big plus.
I think for entrepreneurs starting their company, it's part of the huge challenge to know where to focus the energy on. So we have people checking on a daily basis tons of Excel spreadsheets, etc., just to discover that they have a 50% churn rate, etc., not putting energy on, the real issue. What do you think about entrepreneurs? Where should they put their energy? What kind of metrics should they follow as a start? A lot of people are talking about having just one metric to follow as a start, so you improve it on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis. Do you agree with this statement? And what kind of metrics would you take really as a start for an entrepreneur? Is it ARR, maybe?
I'm not sure if it has to be really one metric only. I think it's an interesting idea, but I wouldn't follow it religiously. It could also be 2 or 3 metrics, and also it shouldn't be the same ones every week. Maybe you want to focus on improving your conversion rate just a little bit in 1 week, and then the next week maybe you want to focus on something else. What are the right metrics? It really depends on all kinds of factors, the stage being one of them. In the very beginning, you don't have revenue, so you shouldn't, obviously no point in focusing on MRR, although MRR is a key metric later on. In the very beginning, you probably want to focus on product engagement metrics to see if your users or your trial users or your pilot users are interacting with the product the way you think they should. And then over time, you'll obviously be adding a lot more and a lot of additional metrics to kind of like the stack that you're monitoring.
Thanks, very interesting thoughts. We'll just quickly talk with Amirhossein regarding LagMatic. You had also, let's say, a very interesting journey in the startup creation. You started as a finance consultant. You built a first company, mostly on, let's say, social monitoring. Maybe you will tell us a bit more, because it shifted one day, you'll tell us more, to Logmatic, this wonderful company checking logs. So tell us a bit about your journey.
Sure. In fact, yes, we first started a company called Logmatic that was looking into social media. So we built an analytics tool, deep diving into tweets, Facebook posts, YouTube videos, and so on. And it was working okay, but as every startup, we had to understand what was happening. We used to make tons of API calls every day to all those services. They weren't all very robust. And each time we wanted to understand what was happening, the tech team used to say, we've got to look on the logs. So we were bootstrapped. We didn't feel like we would buy a software. And one of our engineers said, you know what, a log is a tweet. So we just plugged the logs on our tool. Then obviously, you know, a few things happened. And that's the way we actually switched from social media to machine data analytics.
Excellent, very interesting way of creating your actual business. And now, so you're running a huge company used by the top brands. How do you manage your company, your data, in comparison to what you had before in the social media management company?
Well, we eat our own dog food a lot. I mean, since we started logging our own logs, we've multiplied them by about a factor of 50. So we'd love all our customers to do the same, by the way, because we price based on volume. So
So you follow cash position and revenue too.
We use it. Everybody in the company uses it. For us, it's a matter of being a bit data-driven. And so the tech teams will follow exactly what is happening on the system. So is everybody having a good experience? Are the databases running correctly? Corrections are fine. API calls are okay. So all those technical KPIs are monitored in real time. The sales team follows what's happening. So every time somebody signs up on the website, we get a Slack notification saying, hey, there's Frederic, who just signed up, why don't you call him right now? Whenever Frederic sends too much data, the sales team also gets a Slack notification say, he's using a bit more, why don't you try to upsell him? So we have, we use that data for sales, we use it for customer support, especially when a customer calls you, there's only one chance to give him the right answer on what's happening. That's why you need instant access to the only place where you have the answer, which is the logs. So at the end of the day, we have everybody using it for his own special needs. Since all our business evolves around this application, we put all the data we can, so from the servers, but also from the browsers, from the mobiles, and everything is then spread within the company to the different people.
So data is the base of the company, at the core of the company, and it spreads automated to create some interaction and engagement with your user. Okay, wonderful. I think we have 3 people really who have data-driven company in terms of product, in terms of value. That's also why I'm very happy to have Kasper, because Kasper, you have also a wonderful entrepreneur journey, but you mostly based your SaaS company on people. I think that's also key when managing a startup.
Yes. Sorry. Yeah, definitely. Thank you. So, well, Peakon, where I am now, we are creating a employee insights platform, it's a management tool to understand your employees a bit better. And one of the reasons is that we, after running Podio and other companies, we basically saw how, you know, every other aspect of your business, your sales, your customer care to the buffer example, your finances, everything is run on data, and then your employees is purely run on anecdotes. And it is actually significantly harder as you grow. When you're 5, 10, 20 people, you can solve most of the problems in the pub, but after that, it starts getting harder. So we're trying to kind of put data into your people or your employees as well.
And what kind of KPI do you track for people in your SaaS company? How is it built, and how do you see them? I mean,
so I think one of the first things that we wanted to do was obviously provide people with a better experience than what they have now. Like the typical way of measuring employee engagement is through like very big annual surveys that looks like they were made in '98. So one thing is create a better experience. We also believe we can create better insights. And one of the ways of doing that is to make it much more real time. Because one thing about data is you find out that a company is not run on an annual basis. A lot of things happen in a year in a startup. So measuring measuring your employees once a year doesn't make any sense. So we're trying to make it more real time, and obviously adding, you know, AI and whatever fancy buzzwords we have nowadays into it.
along your way with Podio at the time, you joined as a co-founder. The company has been sold to Citrix for I think something like 50 million. So can you tell us, I mean, in this crazy journey, what kind of metrics you've been following as a start that you dropped along the way, and what kind of metrics you've been following at the end you should have followed from the start?
Yeah, interesting. I don't know if anyone here knows Podio, but we created like a workflow platform thing. Anyways, but I think I'm not that old, but I sometimes feel a bit old in this environment. Because, you know, we used to mock my co-founder in Podio. He was 11 years older than me, and we used to mock him that he was so old that he had been partying before AIDS. I think in some years I'll be the guy that is so old that I built companies before lean startup and data-driven and all that stuff. We didn't build a startup based on data. We built a startup because we believed we could actually change the world. And in the beginning, the only data we had was, will we survive to the end of the month? And that actually worked out quite well. You get a lot of motivation out of that data point. It's very, very simple. And then obviously you start adding things. We took us 1.5 years to launch the thing. We haven't read that lean startup thing. And then it actually went quite well. So I think sometimes we get too obsessed with the methodology and the fact that we have to have an API and we have to have data. Like, I think the point about data and what you're trying to build is like we have to create better insights. And when I sometimes go out as an angel investor and talk to companies, they come with all these bullshit arguments based on data. It's like, oh, we A/B tested this and that. And like, okay, how big was the test? Yeah, we sent, you know, 40 emails to this A and 40 emails to B. And it's like, that's scientifically stupid. Like,
I think that's a great point. Actually, I would say probably 90% of the A/B tests are totally statistically insignificant if they are done at the early stages, because you need, I mean, it's actually not that hard to do the math. There are even online calculators that tell you like the statistical significance, but you need pretty large numbers to detect pretty small differences.
Yeah.
Right.
No, so I think, you know, we were not very good at it in the beginning. Would have done it different now? Yeah, probably. We would have added more data to the early days, but we were obsessed about figuring out why people liked it and why they didn't. And I think that is to your point about like what is it you measure in the early days. Then obviously later on we also hired data scientists to run, you know, all kinds of fancy things of lead scoring machines and all that stuff. But then we also had 20,000 companies signing up every week. Then it's a little bit different, right? Then we got acquired by Citrix and no shit, Sherlock, but big companies, they don't understand it at all. And that's one of the reasons why we can run faster as SaaS companies, right? So So data definitely makes sense, and it have exponentially evolved over the last 5-8 years. If you look at the tools we use in our marketing department, it's like completely changed. Like Zendesk changed the customer support. We actually have Morten and Alex as angels in Peakon nowadays. So I know Zendesk quite well from Copenhagen also. So all of that have changed, and the reason why we went into Peakon is that I actually believe that you'll see the same kind of. When I worked in a telco when I was 20, my only metric was how quickly can I hang up the phone. But then Zendesk came along and they created this whole like customer experience. It was not about hanging up the phone, it was about doing all the stuff that the buffer girl just talked about. And I think you have the same thing within HR. It's been in a department where everyone kind of hated to talk to HR, and HR is like a really, really bad thing. And I think you will start seeing employee experience being kind of the same thing. And in order to do so, you need to provide them with data that they can actually be more strategic. So anyways, that's what we're trying to do.
Excellent, thanks a lot. What could be your advice now to the people in the audience, creating company or at early stage? What should they really focus on? You just said, I mean, okay, it's your clients, maybe your gut feeling more than data, maybe at first. And then, okay, scale following data. What's your, say, one key advice to an entrepreneur starting his company today?
Don't read all the books, but focus on understanding like the core of your business, right? And that obviously, you know, understand your funnel. It can be simple, but try and understand kind of get that core insight, right? Which is not necessarily easy. It sounds a lot easier than it is.
Very good one. Maybe
sure.
Would you?
My advice would be to really focus on, if you're a product company, on trying to figure out how well your customers are doing with your product. What's their experience? Is this a great experience or not? And in the early stages, you definitely are not going to base this on data. It's more talking with them. But as you grow up, you know, really we look at tons of KPIs, but what really matters for us is their experience. So in our case, like the response time, you know, how happy they are on using the product. And these would be the data that we follow. But this is the most critical thing for us, is to make sure every customer is happy every day.
Are you a Chartmogul client so far? Not
Sorry?
yet? Are you using Chartmogul to follow some data? Not yet?
It's actually, we might get into Chartmogul, yeah.
Okay, cool.
I would like the demo also.
So I think the entire audience will check the demo. Yes.
I'm actually a bit hesitant giving any general advice for the reason you mentioned. There is enough advice out there, maybe too much, lots of blogs, business books, and so on. So I'll try it nevertheless, but I think it's even more important to just use your brains. But I think the two pieces of advice that I would give would be first to really invest, or maybe even over-invest in building the best possible team. I think even in the early days, spend time to network with people and start to build relationships with people who you might not be able to recruit in the next 12 months, but by the time you are, maybe 1 or 2 years later, if you haven't started building out that network early on, I think it'll be very hard for you. And the second one, really leverage all of the products and technologies which others have built. Like, try to reinvent as few wheels as possible. Use whatever it might be, Stripe for payments, Chartmogul for subscription analytics tools. There's such a fantastic choice of tools out there if you compare it to 5, 10, or 15 years ago, which all allow you to launch much faster and focus on building your own product and testing your original hypothesis. So you shouldn't waste any time rebuilding any of the stuff that's out there already.
It's really an excellent advice. I mean, it's also interesting to see that you, Nick, you've created Chartmogul because you had a need of those kind of solutions. How would you say that data helped also to overcome competition? We know that the SaaS industry gets quite crowded?
I'm not sure if I can answer that, but I'll try. I'll try with the. I agree with Christoph around. Follow up on that point. I think we subscribe to around 50 SaaS products now. So like, even though we only have 15 people on the team, we have something like 50 products. So if you try to build those all yourself, it's like hundreds of years of engineering work. So it definitely, I definitely agree with that. But in terms of, I won't give general advice, but in terms of ways to use, data, because I've been in the sort of data game now, analytics game for about 2 years. I think my general feeling on using data is there's kind of really two use cases. One is just purely informational. It's kind of metrics and high-level KPI reporting for management, for your board, your investors, et cetera. And that doesn't really help you run your business particularly. I mean, it's great to have something to look at and to keep track of things, but it doesn't give you anything to impact decision making. And I think data can really, you can never really drive your business with data. You can only have it inform decision making. And the best way to use data to help you inform decision making is to, a bit like Asa from Buffer was saying, is to do segmentation on the data. So if you're looking at MRR, don't just look at MRR by itself. Segment it by, attribute it back to lead source. So you say, okay, well, we had these marketing channels, and this marketing channel produced this much MRR. Or the director of customer success at Typeform was doing an experiment recently where they looked at NPS score impacting churn rate. And they found that, yeah, of course, the people with bad NPS score, the detractors, had a bad churn rate. But they found the worst churn rate was the people that didn't even respond to the NPS survey at all, which is kind of interesting. So you can find these things, and they say, so they're now concentrating their efforts on the people that didn't even respond to the NPS survey more than the detractors. Things like this. So you can, if you segment stuff and you pour in data and you kind of, things like churn rate, it's interesting by itself, maybe as a high-level metric, but if you can kind of slice it up, then you can get some insight that might inform decision-making. But you still have to use your brain and make your own decisions, really, at the end of the day. So.
But isn't it a huge challenge for any CEO just to know how much time he should spend on, filtering, analyzing data, and in running the business, as you just said? Maybe there's some churn rate issue that are not seen because CEO spends 80% of the time on spreadsheets, on analysis tool. What's the balance to have?
Well, I don't think it takes so long anymore with the tools that are available. Intercom, we pipe the Intercom data into Chartmogul. We can do the segmentation there. Intercom does a great job at seeing which users are, they have a great word for it, falling away or something. Intercom have
I don't know this one.
Something like that. Anyway, they kind of give you. There's so many tools. It's not that time consuming anymore, I don't think.
Okay, so to summarize, guys, use tools that exist, and so no need to spend hundreds of hours on analysis. I check what exists and then take good decision and rely on instincts. I think that's also an interesting conclusion to a topic that is called managing your startup with data. Guys, use instinct and focus on people. What would be a key advice? Maybe Amirhossein, what would you say to our fellows in the audience?
Well, I think we talked about it a few minutes ago, but I think all the advices here we had were great. Use your brain. Don't rebuild it. Sorry, your heart. Yeah.
It never hurts.
Yeah, use your heart to love your customers. And I think the point you said is also great about not reinventing the wheel. There are so many things there that help you go faster. I think we are proud of building a product for our customers. I don't think I would be proud of spending hours on my pivot table instead of using a tool that would go faster. I try to leverage the stuff that I find instead of rebuilding it. Yeah.
I think it's an excellent conclusion, guys. Thanks a lot.